right, welcome back. Mining Indaba 2022 coming to you live from the mother city at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. Well, with me right now I have Dr. Phindile Masangane. She's the CEO of a Petroleum Agency of South Africa. Thanks so much for coming through, speaking to us here on Morning Live. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Sakina, and thank you very much for inviting the Petroleum Agency South Africa.
Petroleum Agency of South Africa. So what exactly do you do?
Commonly called PASA, the Petroleum Agency South Africa is the regulatory authority for the upstream oil and gas industry. So we are the ones that advise the minister on whether or not to award licenses and permits for the exploration and production of oil and gas in the country.
So you're actually the people who caused all of that ruckus not so long ago about exploration by a certain oil company off the east coast of the country.
We didn't actually cause a ruckus, Sakina. Just to put it in context for your viewers, we did have stakeholders, importantly the community members in the areas in which the projects are located, coming to the front and saying that they were not adequately consulted on the projects that are going on in terms of exploration and production. So, Sakina, we are in the process as a regulator to review our standards and our policies to make sure that the industry can up its game in terms of the consultation of communities. So you will see new guidelines being published to make sure that the consultation with our communities are meaningful, so that our communities have got all the sufficient information to know the potential impact of oil and gas, but also, importantly, the potential benefits.
And I think you cannot overemphasize the importance of that, given what has just taken place. But had that being said, it did seem as though there was almost a single narrative emerging out of that particular situation, whereby we heard a lot about what of the negatives were that were associated with exploration. But let's just talk exploration and what exactly it entails, one, and two, one often hears that we are not doing enough exploration in South Africa. So is that because you are not issuing enough of those exploration licenses, or what seems to be the problem?
Thank you. Multiple questions in one there. So let me take a step back. A single narrative about the negative impact that exploration of oil and gas can have on the environment. We acknowledge that, Sakina, that exploration and production of oil and gas has got risks to our environment. But technology has advanced, and as South Africa, we have adopted those technological advancements that help us to minimize the risk to our environment. What does this exploration entail? You would have seen that recently in the media there was a lot said about seismic surveys. Seismic surveys are actually a very old technology that has been used, and it's matured now. So as I said, it's matured to advance to make sure that the impact on our marine ecosystem is minimized. I think there is also a big misconception in the public that these seismic surveys are purely for the oil and gas industry. As we push back on seismic surveys, we must be careful as a country that this technology is used not just for oil and gas. It is actually used to define our borders, our maritime borders between countries. It is actually used in other countries for offshore wind technologies. So we must not have the misconception that seismic surveys are only applicable to oil and gas. So as we push them out in South Africa, we must know that we're going to impact other industries. What do these seismic surveys entail? This is literally releasing of pressurized air into our seabed, and then we collect the signal as the sound bounces back into the bottom of the ship. And that's what helps us to collect data, to know where is the oil and gas located underneath the seabed. In terms of other technologies, for example, offshore wind, they know then when they collect the data where to locate the wind turbines on the seabed, because then they know what the geological subsurface looks like, and they know which are the points where the wind turbines can be constructed. So it is a very, very useful technology, not just for locating oil and gas deposits, but as I say, for other industries as well. And the impacts are well known, and there are mitigation measures that can be used to minimize these impacts. Akin.
Dr. Masangane, with regard to whether we are doing enough exploration of our mineral riches in this country, in terms of the licenses that you issue, on average per annum?
Before I give you the average per annum, let me acknowledge that as a country, we have not done enough exploration activities. South Africa is blessed with a lot of oil and gas. And to think that as a country, in spite of how much oil and gas potential we have, we import all the oil and all the gas that we use in South Africa. This has got a serious negative impact to our economy. Importantly, because we import a lot of the oil and gas, we cannot industrialize. A big example is that fertilizer is still imported in the country because this would be a feedstock for that. And as oil and gas prices increase, unfortunately, the cost of fertilizer to our economy also increases. So I think it's a pity that as a country we have not explored enough of these resources, and therefore we are not an oil and gas producing country, in spite of the fact that we are well endowed with oil and gas. So on average at the moment we are seeing probably about 4 or 5 oil and gas exploration permits that are issued, and the applications though are much more than this. This year alone, the financial year that we are closing, we closed on the 31st of March, we received close to 50 applications for exploration and production activities.
So 4 or 5 out of 50 applications, or why? Well, what's the reason for that?
The reason for that is that when we receive the applications, because we have a responsibility of making sure that whatever activities will be carried out, there are mitigation measures to make sure that the impact on the environment is minimized. We then send all the applicants to undertake what we call an environmental impact assessment. So the applications that we receive then have to embark on an environmental impact assessment process. And during that time, that is when they have to also consult with the stakeholders. We have to look at the activities that they will be undertaking, and we have to make sure that we bring experts on board to advise us whether there is enough mitigation measures to minimize the impact on the environment.
Let me ask this. Do you think that you could do more, that you could be perhaps a little more proficient in terms of awarding those permits?
Historically, we could have done more, but where we are now, with all the risks of climate change, with all the risks to the environment, and us having a responsibility to make sure that we incorporate the latest technology, we have to make sure that our processes are rigorous. So unfortunately, we cannot work any faster. Otherwise, we'll leave some of our important stakeholders behind if we try and move faster than we are currently moving. So I hope that the Minister is happy with our pace, but we assure South Africans that the slow pace is because we have to make sure that we have a robust system that incorporates all the aspects of licensing, but importantly, that the environmental impact assessment is thoroughly undertaken.
Final question, Dr. Masangane, with regard to who these permits and ultimately licenses are awarded to. So just in terms of redress, is it a question of the same old beneficiaries benefiting over and over again, or do you actually have a targeted approach in terms of, for example, bringing in more women into the sector?
We do have a targeted approach, and in us engaging with industry, we can only encourage them to bring in women and previously disadvantaged South Africans, specifically black South Africans. I'm happy to say that on our onshore applications, that's where we see a lot of South Africans participating. But that is because the cost of exploration onshore is much cheaper. Offshore exploration is still costly. That's why we are seeing less participation. But Sakina, I'm happy to say that we are seeing a black women-owned company in South Africa that is rising. They are called Indaba for Petroleum, and we see them participating as a shareholder in a number of our licenses, and we are proud of that.
Dr. Phindile Masangane, thanks so much for speaking to us. The CEO of Petroleum Agency of South Africa, Dr. Masangane, speaking to us about their work and, of course, the pace of exploration, and we'll talk to them. And I hope to go on one of those crafts. I don't know how feasible it is, Leanne, but I think it would be beautiful to actually go and see how these explorations are actually carried out. Maybe someone is listening, maybe someone here at Mining Indaba 2022 will, volunteer to take us out with a crew to actually see all of this.